Howdy folks, welcome to Bullish on Farming. Today's February 12th. Nice pretty sunny morning. Still cold, but things are going good. Today I want to talk about our feeding program in more detail. How keeping our animals on the land as many days out of the year sets our animals up for success in a grass-fed, grass-finished program. And so obviously we're talking cattle. A little bit of context: we moved on this farm last December, and so the fields weren't left in a condition for us to stockpile graze. So we did have a section feeding the cows outside of the barn, which is somewhere over there, and they had access to the barn in there. We turned them out in May, and they haven't been in the barn since. Now we have the sows in the barn, and they're farrowing out, and our cows maintain nature's design, and we're on a stockpiled field, which means we have rested feed underneath this snow. And we were grazing on this farm right up until January 1st. We fed hay for 15 days in December because winter was encroaching, and we would get some adverse winter stints, but it didn't fully settle in until January 1st, and we've been on hay since. So we're obviously bale grazing right now, and it's going good, but we anticipate that come March, April, we're gonna have more grazing days yet, because I sectioned off this field and we've pretty much distributed the cattle's impact how we would like in this section. I'm waiting to move the wire, which you can't see, it's just past that post. Once the snow starts to thaw, I'm gonna push that wire down, reveal more stockpile. We're gonna resume grazing and the bales stop coming out. So this is how we've anticipated that we're gonna save about 40% on our winter hay feed costs this year. We got about half the group out here and half of them in the bush. And so that's a big savings. And by allowing our animals to graze whenever conditions are favorable, in my experience, it's the preferred way for the cattle to feed. First of all, because you don't have to buy the bales or buy the feed. The cows are just grazing vegetation rooted in soil as they did evolving over millennia. Second of all, I see vegetation rooted in soil as a higher quality feed than hay. Now, I'm not just gonna say that's a blanket statement, because it also depends on your fields. And we don't have spectacular fields on this farm. They're good, they're not spectacular. And we have good green hay, but I've said in previous videos that I see hay as a processed form of feed. You need to cut it, you need to let it dry, you need to bale it, and you need to store it. Well, you don't really need to store it. We've just stored them outside before on their side, and for beef cattle, that's just fine. It doesn't have to stay pretty and green. That outer edge, the cows will just eat around it, and in the program that we use, the residual goes as fertilizer into the soil, so that just contributes to the fertilizer. But by grazing vegetation rooted in soil, you're eating the vegetation while it's alive, okay? Although it might be a dormant season, when you're not grazing May through November or December, that grass, for instance, come March, April, if stockpiled correctly, will have enough energy and will be good quality feed for these animals. Why? Because that's the way it was and is and had to be when these animals had to sustain themselves over millennia. They are ruminant animals. They have 4 stomachs to convert vegetation rooted in soil into meat and to maintain body condition. And these are large animals, so they eat all day just to do that. And by having well-rested fields, that means that you've taken your cows off at the right time of year. And for us, that's around June, maybe early July, depending how it is. It could be late May. And so when that grass grows out, it doesn't really go to seed, and it stays in a vegetative state. And when your grass is rested in that fashion, even after a winter, sure, it may not be as vibrant green as it once was, but it's still palatable and definitely has enough energy for the animals to consume. Now, being here in southern Ontario, where we obviously get right winters, there is the reassurance that if I need to supplement with bales, we will. And so let's just say I'm observing the cattle grazing stockpiled fields, and they don't seem to be maintaining conditioning the way I'd like. Wasn't a problem for us in December, but let's just say in March or April, I start to find, well, you know, the cows, their rumens aren't really full the way I like to see. Their conditioning isn't quite keeping up with the way I'd like. Then I could always supplement with bales. We wouldn't static bale graze because if we're in milder temperatures, I'd have to roll out the hay. I don't want the cows mobbing around a bale the way they do in winter. And that's what we talked about in our previous video when we were talking about the benefits of a cold, snowy winter. You have an armor over the soil which allows the cattle to mob around bales and give you that heavier impact of static bale grazing, which is a nice treatment for your soil and a fertilization. And so, yeah, come March, April, still yet to be seen, but the game plan is to graze stockpiled fields. So how does this all set up our animals for success in a grass-fed, grass-finished program? Well, because obviously a grass-fed, grass-finished program does not feed the cattle grain, we need our animals to finish properly. And in my experience, if your cows aren't grazing a majority of the months out of the year, you're losing. You're losing and missing out on gaining as many pounds as you can per day by not grazing. Your cows are not gonna gain 1.5 to 2 pounds a day on hay. They're just not. Like I said, it's not nature's selection for a ruminant animal. It'll do, it'll suffice, and your cows will keep getting fat, but they won't be performing gaining 1.5 to 2 pounds a day like they do on grass. Now, will they be gaining that many pounds per day in the elbow seasons? No, because your pastures aren't going to be offering the same nutritional density that they do May through November. But, like I said before, they are eating living feed, which is vegetation rooted in soil. And in my experience, when you graze 7 to 8 months out of the year, and you're finishing a beef animal in 24 to 28 months, by grazing up to 8 months out of the year, let's just use 24 months for simple math, that's 16 months out of 24 that your cows are grazing, opposed to if you're grazing 5 to 6 months out of the year, or 6 months is only going to be 12 months out of 24 months. And so that's 50%. If your animals are only grazing 50% of their lifespan or less, and you're in a grass-fed, grass-finished program, then I understand why folks might be saying that they don't enjoy grass-fed beef because it's not finished properly or it's not marbled right. In order to finish your animals properly, here in Canada, we are limited. You can't send a beef animal over 30 months without them ripping out its spine, which messes with your T-bone steaks and you lose some meat. So the system's kind of working against us in a way, but we've found a way to still finish animals between 24 and 28 months very well. And by very well, I mean we've had 700 pound, and I don't want to brag about it, but 725 plus, I'm hesitant to say, but we've hit it 750. That might be a larger framed animal, albeit. Those are the carcass weights we've had, which puts that animal, I don't know, around 1,100, 1,200 pounds. And that's grass-fed, grass-finished. So let's just say more on average, between 650, 680 is where our carcass weights are lying. And I want to say 700, but you know, that was on another farm. This is a new herd. Those animals were Angus, so Herefords do stand a bit larger. Anyways, the point is you can finish your cattle right, okay? Now, how we set them up to thrive, sure, finishing and all that stuff, that's great. And we've learned how to do that over time by keeping the animals on the land, allowing them to graze stockpiled vegetation, extending grazing seasons, now turning into grazing as many days out of the year as possible as weather permits, bale grazing when it doesn't. But the other benefit to allowing them to thrive, or the other aspect, I should say, which allows these animals to thrive, is by keeping them in their natural setting. They stay in a higher quality of life with great hygiene, which sets up their health for success. These animals are so clean. They're breathing fresh air. They're never in a barn. They're exposed to the elements. They are living just like their wild ancestors did. And so you could say this is a wilder way of raising beef. And are there challenges? Sure. But we don't run away from the seasons and unplug our animals from nature's design. We learn how to leverage our seasons and work with nature's design to honor the life cycle of these animals and give them the best quality of life. And I've said it before, in my experience, the best quality of life equates to the best quality of food, which would have to do with nutritional density and just good, healthy food. And so, yeah, we've talked about the benefits of a cold, snowy winter and how we leverage winter. And there's all different types of climates, right? So you got to work with what you got. This is what we got. And so this is what we're doing. So anyways, folks, it is dang cold. My fingers are about to fall off. I'm going to cap it off here. I'd like to say thanks for stopping by and God bless you all. I'll see you on the next one.